Welcome to OmniUpdate. Right now, the United States is officially preparing for a nightmare scenario it desperately hoped to avoid, forcing open the Strait of Hormuz under the massive threat of Iranian sea mines. The United States Navy is currently relying on littoral combat ships, utilizing advanced drones and unmanned systems to hunt these underwater explosives. But behind closed doors, military planners fear that might not be enough. The situation is getting so severe that the U.S. is now actively considering deploying its very last remaining Avenger-class mine countermeasures ships all the way from Japan to the Middle East. Simultaneously, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has reportedly declared the vital strait completely closed, broadcasting stark warnings that any vessel attempting to transit will face severe and immediate measures. Commercial ships in the area are already picking up terrifying radio broadcasts stating that navigation through the Strait of Hormuz is strictly prohibited. Crews are reporting widespread GPS interference, forcing them to navigate manually through one of the most dangerous and congested waterways on the planet. But the real threat lies hidden beneath the surface. United States intelligence believes that dozens of advanced naval mines, specifically the Maham-3 and Maham-7 variants, may already be seated in the water. If the Strait of Hormuz is truly mined, can the U.S. military actually reopen it? And if they attempt it, what would that massive operation actually look like? Sea mines are not flashy, but they are incredibly lethal. Some float just below the surface, waiting for physical contact. Others sit silently on the seabed, detecting the magnetic signature, engine vibration, or acoustic profile of a passing ship. When triggered, they detonate directly below the waterline, the absolute most vulnerable part of any vessel. Even a billion-dollar modern warship can be completely crippled by a single blast. Naval commanders despise them because, unlike an incoming missile, you rarely see the threat before it is too late. For decades, the United States Navy relied heavily on specialized, wooden-hulled mine-hunting vessels like the Avenger class. But in a highly controversial move, the Navy withdrew those exact ships from the Middle East in late 2025, replacing them with littoral combat ships. However, these new ships do not clear mines themselves. Instead, they serve as floating launch platforms for unmanned drones, completely changing the doctrine of modern mine warfare. Today, mine hunting is about autonomous machines. Underwater drones scan the seabed using high-resolution sonar, mapping every rock, cable, and suspicious anomaly. When a potential mine is identified, a remotely operated robot, like the mine neutralization vehicle, is deployed. It slowly descends, confirms the target, plants a small explosive charge right next to it, and backs away before detonating. No sailors are exposed, and the mothership stays safely out of range. But there is a massive catch. This robotic process takes a lot of time. And in a high-stakes flashpoint like the Strait of Hormuz, time is the one thing the U.S. Navy does not have. You simply cannot slowly clear a minefield while the enemy is actively shooting at you. Mine countermeasures ships crawl at a snail's pace. Drones take hours to process data, and helicopters must fly low and steady, making them incredibly vulnerable targets. Because of this, the U.S. military must execute a critical first step: stop the threat at its source. Over the past few days, U.S. forces have launched a massive preemptive campaign doing exactly that. Heavily armed aircraft, including the legendary A-10 Warthog, have been relentlessly targeting Iranian fast attack boats and suspected mine-laying vessels. Precision strikes have obliterated storage facilities on key logistical hubs like Karg Island. The objective is crystal clear: destroy the mines before they ever touch the water. Once they are deployed, the entire battlefield becomes slower, riskier, and infinitely more dangerous. According to defense officials, at least 16 Iranian boats suspected of laying sea mines have already been destroyed, along with critical support infrastructure. This proves the U.S. is not just reacting. They are actively hunting the threat at its source to buy precious time before the shipping lanes are permanently choked off. But what happens when the mines are already in the water? Even with the shift toward drones, heavy helicopters still play a massive role. The enormous MH-53E Sea Dragon is a beast of an aircraft. It flies incredibly low over the ocean, dragging massive sleds and systems through the water behind it. These towed arrays simulate the magnetic and acoustic signature of a massive cargo ship, intentionally tricking the mines into detonating prematurely while the helicopter remains safely above the blast radius. Not every mine is hidden deep underwater. When a floating mine is spotted on the surface, the response is loud and immediate. U.S. destroyers will simply open fire with heavy machine guns, automatic cannons, or even small missiles until the mine explodes. It is not a subtle tactic, but in a global crisis, speed matters much more than elegance. Here is the strategic reality that most people miss. The U.S. Navy will not try to clear every single mine in the strait. That would take months. Instead, they will focus on carving out a single safe corridor, a heavily monitored, narrow path just wide enough for commercial tankers to pass through. Once that lane is open, heavily armed naval convoys will begin escorting the ships. During this operation, the mine-clearing units will be heavily protected. Destroyers will form a defensive perimeter, fighter jets will circle overhead, and surveillance drones will scan the horizon. In a choke point as narrow as the Strait of Hormuz, threats can appear in seconds. Iranian fast attack boats can swarm, and coastal anti-ship missiles can launch without warning. Every radar blip and unknown object becomes a potential matter of life and death. Sea mines are one of the oldest weapons in naval history, yet they still hold the power to completely paralyze global trade and force the most advanced military on Earth to a grinding halt. Right now, all the pieces are on the board: the mines, the warships, and the escalating tension. The ultimate question is, if this escalates any further, how long before the massive clearing operations begin for real? And if they do, will the world realize just how close we came to shutting down the most important waterway on the planet?